This Choircast podcast is brought to you by Epilogue, a novel by Katie McCrite. Cassie Trowbridge, raised in poverty and isolation, faces a resurgent threat she must defeat. Without her caretakers, she now confronts a troubling future. In a blend of suspense, romance, and the supernatural, Epilogue takes you on a thrilling journey through the unknown. Available now on Amazon.
Welcome to the Unbelief Podcast, your journey, actually our journey together beyond inherited beliefs to a spirituality that works for you. I'm your host, Jeremy. I'm a deep skeptic, also a pastor. We can fix that later, right? No? Okay, so today I'm interviewing Gabie, and she's in the studio, which is really great. This is the first actually in studio recording, and we're gonna have drinks and deconstruction. We're early in the day, so we have opted for non-alcoholic drinks. Gabie, what are you drinking?
I'm drinking a mint and watermelon infused water, which is really fun.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I've got a Coke Zero because I'm a middle-aged person and I still need caffeine, but I don't need calories. So I'm curious, right now, like today, it might be different tomorrow. Mm-hmm. What's working for you? Like spiritual things, like beliefs or practices or whatever.
Yeah, I would say right now what I find is working for me is having conversations with people and asking them kind of what their spiritual views are and where they land. And maybe it doesn't sound like this is a big deal, but it's a big deal for me because before, when I was super Christian, I didn't really give credit to people who were not Christian. I didn't care about their spiritual journey or their story. But now I'm so intrigued about regular people, and I put that in quotes, right? Like kind of, what do you believe and how did you land there?
Right.
And I find those conversations to be so insightful and helpful for me to understand that everyone's journey is so different. And it helps me understand like spirituality is very different than what I thought it was, And so I really I'm very much a people person. So this connection really helps me in my journey.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay, so you said something really interesting. You said back when you were super Christian.
Yeah.
So let's go back to that, because to that moment in time for you, whenever that was, what do you mean by that? Because when I think that's a funny thing, and especially right now in American culture, the word Christian means something. Like I have a problem calling myself a Christian, not because I think I'm not interested in what Jesus was saying, but because of what that word means when I say it to somebody. Like the thing that it calls into mind, all of these conservative politicians in Washington and like them saying things like a biblical worldview, because like, what the hell is a biblical worldview? Like, have you read the Bible?
Right. Yeah.
So when was it that you were really a Christian? Like what did you say? A super Christian?
Super Christian.
Yeah, you were super Christian. When was that? And like, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, I should unpack that a bit. And so I would say what I mean by this was my time during undergrad. So I actually went to Ohio State, and I very much was a part of multiple Bible studies. It filled my evenings, and I was at church every Sunday. And so I guess what I mean by that is when I was consistently reading my Bible morning and night, when I was communing with God the way I was taught, right? To journal, read my scripture every day, make myself more holy, go through the process of sanctification, right? And just always be around like Christian community, like-minded people. I acted a certain way, right? Didn't curse, right? I was someone who I basically set my whole trajectory and my degree to be focused on language, because as I read the Bible, I found that, the gospel is the most important thing. Like, why wouldn't I dedicate my life to telling people how to basically be saved so they're not burning in a hell forever, right? And so I really I still care about people, but in a more religious sense, right? And so I call myself a super Christian because that's all that I guess consumed my mind at the time and what I cared about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting. And so when did that start to unravel for you?
Yeah. And so, oh man, it honestly probably happened in around the fall time of 2023.
Okay.
When I had moved to DC, I had a hard time finding community in general. And so I had church hopped from some churches. I first was part of a church that just had a whole scandal that ended up blowing up.
No.
Yeah. And I was like, okay, leaving this church. And then I was part of another church that felt very money hungry, in my opinion. Left that church. Then I had a recommendation from a friend, because my church in New York that I was very close with and involved with, they're part of the Evangelical Free Church of America.
Right.
And so there was one church here that's EFCA.
Okay.
So I joined that church, but I'm not trying to talk ill of the church, but the church had issues.
Right.
And so I didn't feel comfortable being there anymore. And so with all that happening, as I was part of this church, though, I remember what really started, I guess, my deconstruction. Because, I always was a curious soul. I feel like I'm a very critical thinker. And I had questions that maybe weren't fully answered, but I would just brush off and move on. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to think too deeply about this.
Yeah.
But my friend, she was reading the book Biblical Womanhood. And I didn't even read this. It's what she told me that made me, like, I guess a red flag came up in my head. But she basically said, because the Bible says many things about women, about being silent, right, and whatnot. And so this book was arguing that, she's an egalitarian, the author, basically saying that, the men who translated the Bible at the time did it with a patriarchal lens, right, of the society. And I'm like, hold on, what do you mean? Like,
whoa, wait a second.
Yeah, I'm like, so
there could be bias here.
Right. And so, because I very much was what I know now is a fundamentalist, Bible believing, this is the word of God and nothing else matters.
Right.
When I heard that, I'm like, okay, that makes me question then, how do I know that everything else in there is authentic, right? Or is real or is truth? That made me start thinking, right?
Yeah. And thinking critically.
Yeah. About maybe the Bible isn't because then I remember I was having a conversation with her. I'm like, well, then do you feel like the Bible has error in it? Because that question was a big deal.
Yeah.
She's like, yeah, I do. I'm like, oh. And so, And then I happened to met my now partner at the time, who is atheist, and I would talk to him about my views, and it would be a very much a critical conversation. I appreciated his patience and whatnot, but he made me think a lot about translation, and even me being a linguist, this stuff started making sense to me, and I guess turning my brain on in a different perspective of how to think about the Bible.
Yeah.
Especially when I started, then I found you on TikTok and a bunch of other people. And so things just started progressing in that area. So, yeah.
Yeah. So that's interesting. I find it, always find it interesting what's the instigating factor, what's the thing that sparked it, because it's different for everybody. And I feel like the little bit that I know you, it seems interesting to me that it's the language, and also really interesting because you growing up, it sounds like the actual word, the words were really important to you.
They were.
Yeah. And so when the words aren't reliable in the way that your pastor said they were, what do you do?
So how I felt, I guess, when that was hard. I had a hard time grappling that. And I think I was still in denial when I would have conversations with other critical thinkers about it. I'm like, no, but the Bible is the word of God. This is, but then I guess as I had found you and other people and started reading this book that really changed my perspective on a lot. It's the Bart Ehrman book, Jesus Interrupted.
Yeah.
Man, that book took me 5 months to finish because it was hard for me to digest what it was saying. This historical, looking at the Bible from a historical lens, which I had never done before, and seeing that there are actually potentially, I guess before I get there, I think what I had found out first was that I didn't even know that like I was told that the Gospels were first eye accounts, right?
Right.
Like,
yeah.
And then I find out that actually these are oral tradition stories that were passed down. Like they weren't written until 40 to like 75 years after Jesus had died. And I had a problem with that.
Right.
You know? And so I was like, and I remember telling I remember at first I was talking to my Christian friends about it. They're like, well, no, Gabie, like faith is the gap between understanding faith is the gap between understanding and I guess I forget what else she said, but I felt very much when I bring this up to my friends, like, did you know this? It would be like brushed off. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, this is bothering me.
Yeah. So what do you think prior to that? I mean, you're a critical thinker. You're like, in super grad school in this very niche thing, as happens when you get in grad school.
Yeah.
So what prevented you from turning that critical eye on religion, faith, the Bible? How did that get opted out of that part of you?
I guess like I was very zealous for, you know, what what my pastor would preach about. And I think it wasn't necessarily all the way off. It was on in that I became interested in theology, right? So I was critically thinking about God and his entity and how his relationship with the world and all of that. And so I remember after Bible study, my pastor would know I'd come after Bible study and always have a plethora of questions, right? So I always was critically thinking about God, but I guess in the opposite way of I wanted to go to seminary, right? And I wanted to really learn more, but not in the way where I was critiquing maybe or looking at the Bible from a historical point of view, just because this was like when I first started learning about Jesus himself and the stories. I was really interested in that. Yeah. And so I think maybe the critical lens has just shifted now to now looking at it from a historical point of view. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And you were in a stream of Christianity that didn't talk in those terms.
Yeah. So I would say I grew up non-denominational, and the church that I was a part of was apostolic, Pentecostal, Baptist. I don't even know. It was kind of a mix of all three. And I will say my Bible study pastor I got really close to, he would give us history and stuff, but of course it was from a, Christian point of view. It wasn't like from when I hear you tell us stuff on TikTok, I'm like, this isn't the information I was given ever, and so, I feel like no one talked about did you know it was 50 years after Jesus died, and actually these aren't, eyewitness accounts, or a lot of the letters are forged. Like I never heard of any of this stuff. So no, it wasn't given to me. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's interesting. So I had a little bit of a similar experience. Like I'm super skeptical. I'm definitely a critical thinker, but I was in a place where when I asked questions, I was given answer, I was given data, but it just wasn't accurate.
Yeah.
Right. If I was like, well, what about evolution? Right. Then I would get answer from people that I thought were qualified, but it wasn't, it was, this is a strong word. So it's several clicks back from this, but it feels like propaganda. Right.
Yeah.
So you said there was a book by Bart Ehrman.
Yeah, Jesus Interrupted, yes.
So tell me about that, because it sounds like that was like,
oh my God, yeah,
a huge source for you.
It was, and I'll say in the beginning, my deconstruction, it was really hard. I mean, I was crying all the time, and it's just because, people who have deconstructed understand like your entire world is being, uplifted, just everything that you thought was true is being questioned. And I felt so unstable for so long. I was like, my entire, my career and everything was banked on this one truth that I believe that, you need to, in order to be saved, you need Jesus, and people who aren't are going to hell, right? That was what I focused everything on. So it was just really difficult. And so reading this book at the time, it was so hard to swallow. And I think the reason for it is because I was given this, it really tested my view of the Bible, which my view of the Bible is what fueled my current career right now, right? Like I wanted to translate it. And so it directly impacted what I was doing today, like right now. And so when I would read stuff about some of the letters are forged, and we only have Bart Ehrman would talk about, and of course I haven't compared him to another scholar, but from his claims, he's saying, we only know actually the authors of 8 of the books in the New Testament, right? Yeah. Or the fact that, and then he talked about, stories being passed down and how they can be changed based off of people's agenda. And then the making of the canon and how many other Christian groups were during history had a different view about Jesus. And really the people in power ended up making what the canon is today, which I'm like, oh man. I mean, all of it was just like, I'm very interested now in like I still want to read more about the canon and how it developed and what ended up, because I'm always like, oh, the Catholics are wrong. We have the right Bible. It's like, actually, how do we know? We don't know. And so, which is why your book was also helpful about, you had made a point about, whatever you believe, just know you're 2/3 or mostly wrong. And that's really humbling, I'm like, that's something has helped me. So all these different resources has helped me be a little more calmer today, So sorry, I might deviating from a question. Hopefully not.
No, you're not. This is great. Okay. We're just telling a story, right? I think that is, man, that book. I love that you found that book. And I'm wondering, like, I'm just sort of empathizing with, the way sort of fundamentalist evangelical religious streams tie your identity to religion. And not just to any religion, but to these specific tenets. Yeah. And particularly, I've been thinking recently about I don't know if you heard this when you were growing up, but the idea that your identity is in Christ. Yes. You aren't your own person. Yes. And you got to let go of yourself and be the person that Jesus is. And like, who is that person? Who is the person? What is the person that, what does Jesus say you're supposed to be? Well, you don't get to decide that, but that comes from a pastor. Right. Their interpretation of that. And that, like, being told that your identity is not your own to define. Yeah. Combined with now my identity is in all these religious things. So when that crumbles, it's an identity issue, right? Yes. Yeah. No, that is 100%, I think, why I was having such a hard time. Yeah. Because exactly what you said, I was taught I'm not my own person. My life isn't for me. It's for God. That's why I want to be a missionary, right? Right. And so when everything started coming under attack, I guess, or me just scrutinizing it really messed with me, you know? I had a hard time, like, well, what am I? What do I do? My whole career, like everything, I banked everything on this. Yeah. And so I feel like, it's been now a good year and a half later that I've now found a little bit more peace of finding the community that I have on Discord with you guys and following other TikTokers that have been deconstructing. Like, I know, like, TikTok, but TikTok has been so helpful for me. Oh, yeah. Just hearing people's story and like where they've landed and other people who are in my boat where they critically think and still have some sort of, I wouldn't say I'm necessarily an atheist, but I'm somewhere in the middle of everything. Right. And so I appreciate just people being willing to question and having not an answer. Right. Yeah. I don't feel insane now. Like, I'm like, oh, there's other people like me who are still trying to figure this out. Like, what does life look like now? Yeah. And it really feels like, as I'm listening to you, that you're sort of in the middle of this deconstruction. I still am. Yeah. Like, you're in the thick of it still. Like, you're not in the like crisis mode. Yeah. Right. But so yeah, when the identity crumbles that is related to all of this theology, toxic theology, what do you feel like, and this is a lifelong process, right? So, but now, like, what do you feel like you're discovering about who you are?
That's a great question, because I definitely feel now that I've kind of stepped back from just being so like involved in like religious groups and whatnot. I've had a chance to I guess really see what I'm interested in, and I have found that it has been issues of social justice. And I've always cared about people and humans, which is why I wanted to be a missionary and go talk to people, because I didn't want them to, you know, burn forever. And that's how it's pitched. Right. This is like altruistic. You're proselytizing, you're guilt tripping and shaming and all that stuff. It's okay. The ends justify the means, because the ends is like them not burning forever in eternity. Right. If you had empathy, if you actually loved other people, that's the most important thing, right? Right. And that's exactly, that's exactly why I wanted to dedicate my life to this. And so now I'm finding that, my empathy and my care for people is still there. If anything, it's been deepened, you know? I really care about people and issues of social justice, people of the LGBT community, people who are minorities. I myself a minority woman, you know? And so I find that who I am is someone who cares a lot about critical thinking, scholarship, social justice, and just relationships and people, you know? And language. I love language too. I care about that. Right. Yes. And so you're a person who cares about the world in a way that, and I feel like as I listen to your story, in some ways, like, yes, your identity was so tied to Christianity, and to sort of evangelical Christianity, but it feels like part of what you're discovering is that there was this core of you still, right? That once the sort of toxic theology is pulled out, you're like, oh, no, I've always been concerned with justice, but now I'm really understanding justice and injustice. Yes. Right? Yeah. 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 So what do you do that's helping you actually learn who you are right now? Yeah. Honestly, not to sound like a workaholic, but I find that because I am a social linguist and I research topics of social justice, I find in my readings, it has been really helpful in understanding kind of what I care about as a person. Like right now I'm reading critical race theory and I'm like, wow, I really care about these issues of systemic injustice, right? And would I have gone to a protest before? Probably not. And I'm happy that I've become more also politically active and aware, and just really caring about everybody, you know? And so I find that in my readings and conversations with people, has really been helping me kind of redefine who I am, redefine what I want to do with my life. Right. There is a little bit of guilt that still lingers there of like leaving something that I for so long wanted to dedicate my life to, and fear of community. I still have, you know, people who check in on me that are part of my community. But I don't want other people's opinions to hold me back from what I really care about, you know? Yeah. How do you deal with that? People checking in, and I don't know if your family is still involved in all of that. Like, how are you navigating that? Are you sort of keeping silent and like dealing with yourself right now, or how, like when they call to check in, what do you say? Yeah, that's a great question. I'll say in the beginning it was really rough. I had a friend, or I still have a friend who's still part of like our community, does like youth ministry and whatnot. And I remember when I even told him I was dating someone who was not a Christian, like their answer was like, break up with them. Like, what are you doing? You know? And I'm like, wow, you didn't even want to meet the person or get to know them. Right. And that was hard. I actually, because of that, went to therapy for that because I was having just a rough time. And my therapist is great. She actually is someone who's deconstructing herself. So
that's great.
It's been helpful. But in regard to like my other friends, I feel like I find that there are friends who only wanted to be friends with me because of my shared religion, right? And so now that I'm kind of not going to church or like haven't been in that space, we're not really talking and not really. I kind of let those friendships like die out. I'm like, it is what it is. But my other friends who have cared about me as a person, regardless of what I believe, have been in my corner, you know. Yeah. And my family, my mother's still very religious. I kind of haven't really shared with her my deconstruction. I mean, I think it would break her, to be honest. Because I know she's, you know, I used to be part of the worship team. She was really proud about that. Yeah. And what I want to dedicate my life to. But I think eventually when I'm like, hey, I got a job and I'm doing something else, I think she'll be understanding. It's just, it is a lot. And I find that I'm not necessarily ready to share with everybody, especially people who have poured into me for so long, discipled me, for me to be like, I'm not. Especially because I low-key feel like they have guilted me in some sense. Like, oh, I know people who I've discipled and now they're no longer in the church. I'm like, oh, that'll never be me. And like, here I am. So I'm like, okay, maybe I'll wait to tell them. Yeah. So yeah.
And I think that's important and that's healthy. It's good self-care because what I tell people is sometimes this process is like shaking up a Coke bottle. And like, you need to open it, but like, you just got to go slow. Yeah. And like, just let all of that stuff out as it can. And every once in a while, it's going to start overflowing. You just have to close it back down for a second. Yeah. Because as you said, it's really hard.
It is. Especially with the friends that you genuinely care about. They're like, I still want us to be friends, but if they're not willing to be friends with you because of I don't even say I'm not a Christian anymore. I'm just in a different place than they are, you know? And so I don't know. It's it still makes me feel bad. Like I guess not everybody is aware where I'm at, you know? Right. So I guess with time,
And are most of those people back home?
Oh, I feel like my friends are everywhere. I guess the friends that are still very Christian are in Ohio. That's where I did my undergrad. Yeah. My New York friends are a little bit more chill. I feel our church I feel like leans a bit more liberal, and so those friends are fine. My DC friends, they're cool about it. But I think it's more my Ohio friends that I still keep in contact with. Yeah. Yeah.
So you're building this new life for yourself here. Yeah. This whole new social system, a whole new community that has new norms, right? Mm-hmm. What are those? Like, what are you discovering that like, oh, wow, this was not okay here. It is okay here. This was okay here, but now this is not okay in my current new world.
So I think for me, it's just being able to love freely. Like, I hate that I was, and I really resonated with that chapter in your book, where you talked about you wished you were just able to be empathetic because and not because you had restrictions from like your religion and whatnot. And so that's how I feel towards like the LGBT community, because I feel like for the longest time I was very accepting, but in the back of my head I had the thought, well, like, oh, well, you know, they're going to burn. And like that would really hold me back from, I feel like, being genuine relationships with them. Yeah. And I remember when I was deconstructing, I tried to pick up my Bible again and I opened Psalms 1 and it talked about like curses the wicked or whoever. And I'm like, I can't read this and be and genuinely be friends with people who are part of the LGBT community. Like, I feel like that's violating something there. It bothered me. And so I was like, I need to put this book down. And so now I find that I'm able to just freely be friends with anybody and not restriction based off of your sexual identity, because who cares at the end of the day, right? Like, let people be happy and do what they want. Yeah. And I'm happy that I think before something I would never have done was gone to an LGBT wedding. And like now I'm so grateful that I've come out of this internalized homophobia that honestly, I feel like a lot of Christians like, I'm not homophobic, but then what we believe, I feel, is problematic, you know? And so I'm happy that I've come out of that and really can just genuinely be in relationship with people without restrictions or reservation.
Yeah.
You know?
Hey, we are just going to do a weird thing where we're going to drop this in because we finished the podcast and then we were like, oh, Gabie was like, I wish we talked about this. And so we're going to talk about it for a second right here, right in the middle of things. And I guess we'll get back to whatever else we were talking about. But so go ahead.
Yeah, I was just wanted to mention, like, I felt like before when I was peak Christian, or again, whatever we're calling my time of right. I would just walk around feeling guilty all the time, like guilty that I didn't read my Bible enough, guilty that I wasn't sanctified enough or holy enough or etc. And like I was just so hard on myself. And I find that now that I've stepped away and it's been a little bit more over a year to 2 years, I've just been able to feel free and not guilty, just live, you know, and not constantly in the back of my mind feel, oh, I'm wicked and I'm a sinner and all these things that would constantly be in my head.
That's not psychologically healthy.
It's
not helpful.
It's not. Which I think also lent me to have self-esteem issues,
of
right?
Because
I'm like, oh, I'm not. Why would anybody want to be my friend? Why would anybody want to love me? Why? Because I'm this wicked person, right?
Right.
And yeah, the guilt, like I'm just happy that I'm in a place where I'm not feeling guilty or questioning my every move now. Like I'm just able to live. And like my sister, I had asked her a question, like, you know, because she herself is not spiritual. She's atheist as well. And I asked her, like, well, so what do you think the purpose of life is? She's like, the purpose of life for me is to live. And I loved that answer. Our purpose is to live, right? I mean, I'm grateful that I was given this life and I want to be able to live freely without any guilt going on in my mind, feeling bad about everything. Like, oh my God, I didn't pray enough today, you know?
Oh, right.
It's just was all the time. I just wanted to see if someone could relate to that, but just wanted to share.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. All right. And now back to the conversation that we just interrupted. So that wasn't okay in evangelicalism. It is okay now. What's not okay now that was okay then? Have you bumped on things that you're like, oh, I didn't. Okay, so we don't do that.
Oh, right. Yeah, I think this is funny. Probably like Christians love to do this, but every time you get in a relationship with someone, especially if they're not a Christian, they'd be like, so like, how are your physical boundaries? Like, this is a question that people, I swear, and I wish I was lying, would ask me when I told them I was dating someone. I'm like, that's not okay to do.
That's none of your business.
Yeah, no one does that in the secular world. That's not I don't understand why Christians are so obsessed with this question. And it's been asked to me multiple times.
Oh yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm not answering that, you know. And so I find that there's stuff that overstepping boundaries, also feeling like you have to air out your dirty laundry. I feel like on first dates or when you meet people, it's like, okay, this is my testimony. This is what I've gone through. It's like, we don't need to do that. We can just, get to know someone.
We can talk about coffee.
Right. And so I appreciate, right, exactly. Always linguistic. But I appreciate the boundaries. I feel like I hate to call it the secular world, but I don't know how else to differentiate.
Right. Sure.
The willing to be like healthier in some sense and having boundaries, which are healthy, which I really appreciate. I didn't have those.
No, it's true because like there's an entitlement to personal details.
Absolutely.
A sense of that in the evangelical world that like, I remember talking to a woman who was getting ordained and she was single. So it was a woman getting ordained. So it wasn't in the most fundamentalist church, but still, one of the questions in her interview is like, well, when you date, what are your physical boundaries? Do you have sex with people you date? And it was like, whoa,
it's an invasive
question. What, like, where did it, like, how dare you?
You're right.
You don't get access to my body and you don't get access to my relationships and my romantic world. Like, that's none of your business. Right.
Yeah.
And like your best friend, great.
Right.
Share what you want.
Right.
But like this random stranger that shows up in a Bible study, like.
Right. Yeah. I'm very happy to not. That I feel like that is problematic, and I don't think maybe people are aware, but they should be.
Well, and like I remember another friend went to this like Bible study group, small group, right? Not a Bible study, which apparently is a distinction that we make, right?
Right.
But it was a small group, and they walked in, and the first story was about how did you meet your spouse, right? And that is an intimate story for a lot of this, very, very personal, right? And like you might share that with a friend that is not your deepest friend,
right,
that you've known for a little while, but not the first time you meet people. And that violation of that boundary, or that like over the norm of like overstepping into the personal world, it's part of this, it's the kind of things that cults do as well to make you to take your defenses down and feel like, no, they have access to all of these personal areas, and they get to tell me what I get to do in the bedroom and on a date and with a friend, right?
Yeah. No, I also feel like Christianity fuels that, right? Because like we're taught scriptures like my body's not my own, right?
Right.
So I am, like you said, like I should be willing to just give it all over if someone asks, right? We're all one, we're all the body, and we share all the, you know. Right. So I think that mentality comes from the culture around scripture, maybe, and around just Christianity in general.
Right. And like in the progressive Christian world, like that is very much not what is taught, right?
Yeah.
Like
I guess I meant from a conservative.
No,
right?
For sure. Yeah. No, I hear you, because I mean that's part of the deconstruction journey,
right?
Is and I don't have good language for it, but everybody's got to find their own language of like how I talk about what I am now versus like, you know, versus what I was then. Like the word Christian is very much tied to this, but it's bigger, but it's not.
Right.
Like what do you tell your friends?
You know, if someone asks me, what do I believe? I probably would say, I don't know. That's my answer. But if my Christian friends ask me if I'm still Christian, I would say yes. Yeah. Maybe like an agnostic Christian, probably. Or,
I love that.
Right. So
I love the like juxtaposition of those two words.
Yeah, I'm an agnostic Christian. But someone who, like, I don't know, a critical thinker Christian, I don't know, right. It's like kind of hard because I do relate to the parts of Christianity that have helped me become who I am. Like, I really love the story of Jesus. I felt like he was someone who's very empathetic. Yeah. And like taught how to radically love your neighbor. And I really clung onto that, and I feel like it's shaped a lot of who I am. And so there are tenets of Christianity that I love, that I don't necessarily want to get rid of. And now I'm learning that, you can actually, spirituality can be whatever you want it to be. Right. And I loved in our Discord, someone had said that they're spiritually fluid. And I loved that.
I loved that
I was
term.
Like, wow, that's something I've never, and like dabbles in this, and then at the end of the day, I don't know. Like, I just appreciate the authenticity so much because I am right there with you. Yeah. 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 And that's actually one of the things I love about this community. It's great. So, I talk about it on the podcast, but, it's this, we call it Not Church. Yeah. And it's a spiritual community. I don't know your experience because I'm this sort of weird pastor participant in this space. Yeah. But I've not seen any judgment at all, which I've never experienced in a spiritual community. Yeah. Like what is this like for you? Because like I do feel like spirituality is something that is both personal and communal. Absolutely. And if you don't have both sides of that, you're missing part of it. Yeah. So what is this Not Church thing? How do you experience it? What is this like for you? I love it. I feel like I found my people, honestly. Right. People who are willing to like think critically about stuff. It doesn't shut you out for being like that. I don't have an answer. Like, I don't want to, just doesn't have an answer.
Right.
I appreciate people giving, responses of what they've researched or simply saying, I'm not sure, you know? And I find a lot of peace in that because it's not just me who's uncertain, it's other people who are uncertain, And so I appreciate people's questions. A lot of times I read what people say. Sometimes I'll post stuff in there, but I wish we could meet up in person, because I'm such an in-person person.
I'm actually working on that. So,
that's awesome.
I can't.
Oh my God. It's okay. You have to, you can't, if it's a surprise.
We're going to be, I'm great. Well, I haven't mentioned it in the Discord, but I'm actually working on a way for us to have a retreat, have a big Airbnb or two, and like be in nature together and like cook meals together.
I love that so much. No, actually, because I'm like, this is so great. And like, I always joke with my boyfriend, like, oh, online friends aren't real friends. I'm like, how? That's such a lie. I mean, I met you from online, right?
For sure.
And so I have just really appreciated people's just honesty in this Discord. It has really been healing for me, truly.
I mean, coming from this like very narrow world, and this place is very expansive. What's something interesting you've learned about or discovered or maybe tried based on these people in the Discord?
Or something new?
Yeah, something new that you've discovered, or I don't know, maybe you already knew about it, but you're like, oh wait, I'm gonna try that, or I'm gonna learn more about that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I had asked a question about God being, all powerful, all knowing, and all loving. And I was like, when you think about this feels like a bit of a contradiction, And so I appreciated people's response to that thread because people had talked to me about open and relational theology. And so I read people's responses, and then I have now a Goodreads list that I have a bunch of books that I want to read and still uncover. And so, something new, maybe it's new theology that I haven't looked into before. You interviewed somebody that had a book called Heretic that I ended up reading. And I loved that interview with him, and I ended up reading the book and I really liked it.
Cool.
And so I find that a lot of resources that are offered, I read this book, which was great,
She's motioning towards my book, How to Not Suck as a Christian.
Amazing book, highly recommend. I read it in like 2 to 3 hours. I digested. I'm gonna reread it. It was so good.
I'll pay you later.
No, you're unpaid. No, but I just really resonated, right? And so I've appreciated hearing other people's point of views and then finding new resources for me that helps me engage with what I already know and adding, like you always say, adding new information as a skeptic, evaluating it and seeing if you want to hold on to it or let it go, right? And so I have found that to be very helpful from the Discord because people do share resources. Yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah.
And if the people who are listening are interested in it, it's you can go to patreon.com/skepticpastor. It's $3 a month, and it's $3 a month because like this stuff is not actually free to do, but I'm also, there's so much trauma around like, give me 10% of your income kind of thing. It's like, it's just pay for what you get, right? If it works, great. If it doesn't, it was only $3. Just stop paying. It's okay. So you can go to patreon.com/skepticpastor. And if you're listening to the podcast, you can give us ratings, like all the stars, say something nice would be even better. But Gabie, thank you so much. I'm curious if you were to one of your friends from undergrad that went through the same sort of indoctrination and is in the beginning of their deconstruction, what would you say to them?
I will tell them, like, take a deep breath. It's going to be okay.
It's going to be okay.
It's going to be okay. And they're going to discover so many new things, and that it's okay to learn something new, right? And just take it day by day. Like, I have found, I think that I was doing too much in the beginning. Like, I was getting very overwhelmed with my feelings, but I decided to maybe step away from a critical book, come back, and I really had support from my partner, which I really appreciate. He was very helpful during my, and still is, right? I'm still deconstructing, right? But has been just my rock. So hopefully if you can surround yourself around friends. Come talk to me, though, whoever that is, right? I think it's helpful when other people understand what you're going through, like that. Yeah, I had thankfully 2 other friends who are deconstructing at the same time that I was.
That's great.
And so we were able to talk about stuff, and it's been good.
It's great.
Yeah,
it's gonna be okay.
It's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay.
Thanks, Gabie.
Of course.
That's it. That's the podcast. Shout out to the Choir Network, to Patheos, to Matthew and Keith, who make everything happen. Now, get out of here. Go do something to make the world a better place. Okay? We'll see you next time.